saw this on TV. I could not believe they were still here. So I waded through the water, and somebody gave me a ride on the boat down here. It just broke my heart.
So heartbreaking. Now at 6:30, back to the Harvey flooding disaster taking place in Texas. A look at the flooding inside a Port Arthur, Texas nursing home packed with elderly and frail patients.
And then there's this awful discovery. Deputies find the bodies of a family washed away and killed by floodwaters in Houston.
This morning, the death toll, according to CBS News, stands at 29.
And although the rain has stopped, some areas are facing even more danger. As we told you just a short time ago, breaking right now in Crosby near Houston, there are reports of 2 chemical plant explosions. The Harris County Sheriff's Office says 1 sheriff's deputy was taken to the hospital for inhaling fumes, and then 9 others took themselves to the hospital as a precaution. Authorities had set up a 1.5-mile evacuation zone because plant officials predicted an explosion. Flooding from Harvey knocked out the refrigerators and backup generators that keep the chemicals cool. And we now take you live to CBS 4's Don Champion, who is in Houston. And Don, what more can you tell us about what's happening at that chemical plant?
Yeah, good morning, Lauren. Officials say there was no way to prevent that those explosions at the chemical plant this morning. We are told black smoke is still rising from that scene. As you mentioned, 1 sheriff's deputy taken to the scene after inhaling chemicals. 9 others drove themselves to the hospital as a precaution. The big issue here is that, again, floodwaters knocked out power to generators at that facility that were cooling what we're being told were organic peroxides. The CEO of the company that owned that building and the plant basically told officials this explosion was imminent, and once those chemicals did warm up to a certain temperature. As you mentioned, a 1.5-mile evacuation zone was set up this morning about 90 minutes after the explosion. 300 nearby homes had already been evacuated as well on Tuesday. We're expected to get an update on the situation at that plant around 9 a.m. local time. But Lauren, as you can imagine, a lot of concerned people around that plant. It's just one problem really plaguing this region in the wake of Harvey.
And Don, all of that at the chemical plant happening in Crosby, Texas. You are in Houston right now, where much of the focus these last few days has been a search effort trying to find victims perhaps still trapped in their homes. But firefighters now shifting that focus just a bit. What will they be doing today?
Yeah, as conditions dry out, obviously people can start accessing communities that were kind of cut off by the rising waters. Today, firefighters will begin a block-by-block search for victims in areas that they weren't able to get into before. It certainly is a sign that officials are transitioning from a rescue to recovery operation across this area. As the waters begin to recede here, officials say they are receiving fewer calls for requests for rescuing. In fact, yesterday, Lauren, fire department and police department officials here say they only carried out about 40 rescues here in Houston.
All right, Donna, what can you tell us about what FEMA is doing right now in response to this storm?
FEMA is certainly activating and responding to this disaster. The agency is already hiring temporary workers to help with the disaster response here. Also, about 200,000 people have already filed for FEMA financial assistance in the wake of the storm. So certainly there are going to be some very long-term needs moving ahead for a lot of the storm victims and the people who are displaced. Many of them are still in shelters like the one behind me. Lauren, at one point, officials here said about 35,000 people were in shelters here. And certainly soon, those folks are going to need more longer-term temporary housing as they try to rebuild their lives in the wake of the devastating flooding here.
Don Champion live for us in Houston, Texas. Thank you so much.